Hello, everyone. This is your host, Manoj Tandon, with another episode of Dark Rhino's Security Confidential. Today, we are honored to have Zinet Kamal join us. She has a fantastic story. She's a recent immigrant from Ethiopia. She's also a cybersecurity professional. She's currently a cloud security engineer at Best Buy, also an award-winning children's book author, and is currently working on her master's degree from Georgia Tech in cybersecurity. Very talented person. She is, in addition to all these things, she finds time to be the director of community outreach at Black Girls in Cyber. Um, that's a full schedule, Zinet.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me on, Manoj. I appreciate it. And thanks for that introduction. Wow, was that me? I don't think that's me. It was someone else.
No, that's most definitely you. That is most definitely you do. Just looking at your background, I would have never guessed that you are a recent, and when I say recent, 9 years ago, I believe you immigrated from Ethiopia to the United States.
Correct. Yes.
I would have never figured on that. But now I gotta ask you, knowing that background, how did that happen? And why the United States? Why not? There's so many places on this planet. Why
True.
Minnesota, I guess?
It's a, yeah, why Minnesota? I always get it. I always get it. Yeah, you're right. So just to introduce myself, I mean, you already did the introduction, but just in case you forgot, I'm a mom of four and a wife. I try to always plug that in as a first set of credentials because they're a lot of work. But uh, I'm glad that they're not going to jump in. It's still the summer. They might pop in here anytime.
It's okay.
Fun, right? I'm a mom of
Yeah, it's
four between the ages of 12 and 2-year-old toddler. I did immigrate from Ethiopia 9 years ago. And the reason why we picked the US is because we won a diversity visa lottery. I think it's a
oh
lottery.
wow.
Everybody fills it out, from around the world to come to the US. I think every country has its own quota to, from
Okay.
Ethiopia, from different parts of the world. So we
Wow.
we, we, we got that opportunity. So at that point, I only had my son. He was less than 3 years old. Now he's 12. I don't know how time flies, but I was also expecting my second one when we moved here, 7 months pregnant. So
Wow.
we thought, it would be a good opportunity for the growing family. So, and the reason why we picked Minnesota is because this is the place where we know one person to come to the U.S. And that happens to be my husband's old high school friend. She
Okay.
was living here. So we asked her, we got this opportunity. Can we come? And she says, yeah, you can come. I'll welcome you happily, but I'm only in Minnesota for 4 days because she needed to go back to Ethiopia after 8 years of being away from her home country. And it was like, that's the best we can get. Like, we needed somebody. We've never seen snow, we've never experienced the snow. And
Wow.
Minnesota is very
Yes,
cold
very
and
cold.
snowy in the winter. So we could take anything we can get. So we came here. She showed us. We're always super grateful for her and her family. For after 4 days, we were on our own, figuring out. There's a lot of stories in that, but that's for another episode.
That's for another. No, that's fantastic. And from what I understand, you came here and you went into law, right?
I wasn't
You
involved.
didn't. You didn't go. Oh, you were you in law in Ethiopia as well?
Yeah, I had a law degree and I was working in the legal field um, for a few years, and then came here and totally switched it up. Said had to go back to
But
a school to do something else.
but you practiced law here for a little bit. You were involved with that profession for a period of time as well, right? So
No,
why leave it? Oh,
not
you weren't.
not in the U.S. Only back
Okay.
home. Yeah, I even got an opportunity for scholarship to study like a post grad in Tanzania, some in another African country. Because a lot of people think that Africa is a country, but it's a whole continent with 53 countries. I always try to make a note of that. Ethiopia is just one country in eastern horn of Africa, but I was doing that in Tanzania, but when this opportunity came, I came. So it's a complete revamp and switching career to go back to school from scratch, like going back to community college to do technology, like computer programming, computer science, and all of that journey began after I moved here back in 2013. So no tech background, um, nothing in programming, no word of cybersecurity until I guess 2017, I should say. Yeah.
So why cyber? If you
Yeah.
were going to make a career change,
Mhm.
I mean, there's a lot of careers out there. Why cyber then?
Absolutely. Absolutely. When I came here, especially when you're making that pivot, it's a lot of thinking that you had to do because which route, right? People will tell you, go to nursing school. People will tell you
Yeah.
something else. And then you have, having a lot of opportunities sometimes can be very confusing. Like you have everything. We don't have that option. Like back home, if you came from a certain route in your high school, you can only go
Mm.
to specific fields. And because I thought I wasn't good at math, I chose the social sciences route. That's when I
Okay.
get to pick, law. You can pick business, economics, and that type of fields. But I picked law partly because my family chose that for me too. But after when I moved here, I thought I would go to technology, somewhere in technology. I still didn't know how vast it is. All I know is that like I have the opportunity now. I get to do something I want, not something my family picked. They picked it because they thought it's a good idea that you would get money if you became a lawyer and a judge. At one point, my mom must have said something like, if you become a judge, a lot of people will bring you cattle and camels and that type of things. I'm like, that sounds like corruption. It's not
That
right.
is, well, their heart was in the right place. But
Absolutely.
one thing interesting that I read about you online, so I won't believe everything, but it was interesting. I think you had said that you shouldn't ask your kids what they want to be when they grow up,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Is
You're right.
Does that come from this experience that you personally had?
Because it's always changing, number one. Number two, I think we mold them into becoming something that we want usually. And I don't want to be that influence because usually we have like a set of things that we know. We're shaped by the things that we know. And I know my mom, her intention was really great because I think her father was like traditionally he is the person that people go to for resolving conflicts like growing up. So
Okay.
she saw how much respect that he has in the money, and people would come with things. And I always say that that's not the right. But I mean, I was even successful, being in that field. But for my kids, um, like choose something that makes you happy. I think happiness comes first. What they like. I don't want to be influencing them, but I could only, as a parent, open exposures to things. For example, if it's cyber, like you have this option of or tech, like you can be anything you want. Those are also the things that I try to mention in both of the books that I wrote for children's. But yeah, that is the reason. Like I don't want to be influencing them. I don't know if it has to do with my experience, but to answer your question that you asked prior to that, um, cybersecurity. I haven't heard about cybersecurity until probably the end of 2017. It was mostly, me going back to technology, trying to learn what I like. It's intimidating, absolutely, if you don't have the experiences, and especially if you're learning with people who are already from here and you don't have a lot of people who look like you within those classes, not one class, two, three, four, and across the programming, computer science and computer programming, and myself trying to figure out what I'm doing. So towards the end of 2017, I had this opportunity. I think I talked about it in a number of places where to participate in a cyber defense competition representing the university. And I became part of that team somehow. It
Okay.
took a lot of work, but I think that is my first exposure into that world, and where I say that, now I know what I want to do, because that happened during my senior year of doing my computer science degree. And up until that point, I wasn't finding my place. Yes, you're doing a lot of projects, a lot of deadlines on top of, um, taking care of three young kids at that point. The fourth one wasn't there, but it's a lot of work. So you doing another activity, which is that's considered extracurricular curricular activity, the cyber defense competition one, being able to self teach and learn that, I think kind of gave me that exposure to say that. I think I like cybersecurity. I'm going to explore that. I'm going to learn more and see what happens in the,
You know
you
what?
know, yeah.
That's you have to be a very driven person because you started off with you weren't so sure of yourself in math and science, and now you find yourself in with a computer science degree, which is heavy in logic, and you're doing a master's in cybersecurity, that too from Georgia Tech, which is
Yeah.
a very technically savvy school to put it in an understated way, right? It's that's quite a transformation, and that's
It
quite a
is.
journey, and I hope that's an inspiration for people listening
It is
that it
quite
can
a
be done.
journey. It is quite a journey. It's quite a transformation. I always say, like, it's been 9 years, but it always feels like 9 days. I mean, because so many things happen that time flies so fast, right? I mean, like being able to raise a family while building your career on the side, just feels like time really flies by so fast, and it's a lot of change too. And I did say that math, I used to think that I wasn't good at math. It was more like the fear of it. I don't know why. And then when I came here and decided to be in tech, I mean, there are courses that you have to face naturally. And I had to
Yes.
take a lot of math classes. And what I did was, if I'm going to be this, I'm going to face it. So what I did was, I wasn't really bad at math. It might have been the teachers. I mean, some of the things that influence you into thinking that you're not good at it. And I think a lot of I learned that when I did presentations and stuff, a lot of people relate, especially women. They say that we thought we weren't good at math, but that's not true. And I had to do a lot of studying because I thought I was bad. I had to do it, and I ended up getting A's in all of the math classes, like college algebra, discrete math. You can think of all the math classes that you have to take to be in a computer science or computer
Yes, quite a
programming
few.
classes. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's a lot of transformation, a lot of learning, a lot of being agile. I think that's what happened in the last 9 years. From that community college to transitioning to a 4-year degree to do computer science, still trying to figure out what I'm supposed to be. I used to think that, like, okay, so I finished this program, but who would want to hire me? Because I'm just in an industry where I don't have exposure. And then once I found that cybersecurity field, before I even step into the real world, is when things started to happen, because I did internship part time. I was doing security certifications on top of the degree. I wasn't just relying on the degree because I had to complement it with a lot of the things. When I was interning, the
Understood.
interns were uh, younger than me because they were coming out of high school.
Yeah.
But for me, I was transitioning from another field. But I think those kind of experiences, to get a real world experience, especially if you're coming from another continent, I think you need to know the culture too, because it's a whole different situation. And if you're coming from being just a mom and a student, not having that experience, I think I talked about it. You need to have that transition coming from just talking to kids,
Yeah.
humans, to talking in meetings. Like, that was a transition that happened, I think, from my internship experience. Yeah.
So let me ask you a difficult question then. And you brought
Sure.
up the question of culture,
Mhm.
and culture is certainly I mean, Minnesota has a very different culture than Ethiopia. Have you ever felt or experienced not that you were being held back because of your culture or your heritage? Is that something that you've ever had to face, or has it been pretty much smooth sailing?
No, because I mean, in Minnesota, we have a lot of immigrant communities, refugee communities. So, I mean, I haven't seen that, like, especially in the spaces, I should say, in the spaces that I have been, like the Twin Cities and that type of things. I mean, I haven't explored the whole Minnesota because it's a very huge state. Uh, but in schools and classes, like I said, a lot of the people used to ask me, even people who look like me, like, they would assume that, are you in nursing or other fields? And when I mentioned computer science or computer programming, they would say, that's different,
Yeah.
and I get that. I've seen that encounter, like, in schools, in school compounds, and that type of things. But at workplace also, it's not diverse. I mean, we already know, like, cybersecurity isn't diverse as we would like it to be. But I guess, for me, I see it as, I always talk about like it needs to be diverse. You need to be tapping to, people from a whole perspectives of people from different backgrounds to solve, the problem that we're facing within the industry. But I see it more me, if I'm not going to be in that space, if I'm going to be intimidated and go away, who's going to be in that space, right? We needed to occupy that space and say that we do belong to, and then occupy that space and being able to thrive and show other people, inspire other people, and be inspired by other people as well, so that we can carve that path or open that path for other people too. So
Now,
not specific experiences, but I haven't seen that there are people who look like me, being in those spaces as much as I would like to see, which would have
now,
been great. Yeah.
you've been true to your heritage. You're very proud of who you are. You're very proud of being a mom of four people and being an author and having accomplished all these things. What is your message for people who may feel they are different, or they feel like they have to conform to a certain set of rules because there's an expectation and not be true to themselves, maybe? Do you
Yeah.
have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that we don't know about ourselves is that the unique thing that we bring, or the special sauce, or the special ingredient about any individual, is just the fact that you being you. I can only be Zinet. I cannot be anyone else. And there are things that you get from me being Zinet, and everything that makes me me, right? All of the things like the experiences that I have been in another field, or me being an immigrant, the challenges that I faced, not being able, in tech, and then being able transitioning, all of those skills and the transferable skills that you bring, and then me as a person, right? A visibly Muslim, hijabi, Black immigrant woman, being in an industry where it's considered male dominated and less diverse. So I think showing up pays off a lot. I think even on those hard days, is very helpful. And I'm not gonna lie, sometimes it can be exhausting. Sometimes there are self-imposed things that we go through.
Sure.
People, when they see us, uh, the first thing that they see are some of the things, the stereotypical things that they face. But I think you can only debunk that by just showing up and showing people that you can be in such spaces, and you do belong, and you can also achieve more than anyone else can. So I think it's up to that person's commitment. It's the mindset, but it can be burdening sometimes. Like I face people, and then I feel like I have to achieve more. Always have to do more to belong in those spaces, and that would bring us to another conversation of that imposter syndrome, which everybody else
Right.
faces, which I do. And I think recognizing that and saying that I've done things, and I should own it, and I do belong, and just pushing through are some of the tips. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then see, that's an inspiring story, and thank you for shedding some light on that, because there are a lot of stereotypes, and um, I think the more people get to recognize that people are more similar than they are different, will
Absolutely.
be a better place. The world would be a better place.
I agree.
So let's switch tracks a little bit and go to your profession. Let's enter the world of cybersecurity now. We have, and we'll talk about the enterprise and securing cloud and whatnot here in a minute. But you wrote a children's book,
I do.
right? Oh no, hacked again. I love the title, right? In fact, I I love that title so much that I might actually send that off as a gift to some professionals in the industry.
To
Because they
adults.
keep getting hacked again and again in spite of all the things that they keep doing. But as a parent,
Mhm.
give all the listening parents some ideas on what they should do to keep their children safe in cyberspace, since you wrote the book on it.
Yeah,
I'd
I
love to
did.
hear.
I did, and it's my second children's book. The one that I started writing first was titled "Proud in Her Hijab," think it's in the background as well.
Okay.
That was proud in her
Oh,
hijab. I think it
great.
relates to the topic we talked about, to your earlier question about embracing your own identity. But the
Yes.
second book, I have it here as well. Oh no, hacked again. That got published this year. It came about from the experience of my own kids being hacked during the pandemic while doing online
Wow.
gaming. But the concepts really translate to our experiences as an adult, how we, clicking phishing links or not having the right password, not using MFA, and how we end up getting hacked. Um, to go back to your question, like some of the tips that are touched on the book, it's a story, it's a transitional chapter book with the small chapters, 5 chapters of books,
Okay.
and the story um, has some themes that are driven from the story are how you should be protecting your password. Um, Not sharing that. I'm just looking at some of the lessons here that are shared within the book at the end of it. And it's not to share your password with anyone. And also listening to your parents when, because we don't do that as much. We give them gadgets and tablets, but I don't think we think about, do we teach them about how to have a secure password, a complex password, or not to share it? I think with kids, I think that's
Will
the
a
challenge.
child understand that concept though,
Exactly,
right?
exactly. And I mean, if you don't build that, and we model that behavior to the kids, I mean, if we do that and if we're having those conversations within the home, I think they get used to that and build that security mindset and culture. And we as a family and parents are responsible to cultivate that culture, I think. And that's the reason, because the book is meant to be a conversation starter with between a parent, a grandparent, and a kid, so that the importance of being safe online. Like, okay, we tell them how to cross the street, look left and right, don't talk to strangers, but do we do that in the digital world? Because those two seems to be blurred, especially after the pandemic, right? All the education is
Right.
happening online. The games are happening
Yes.
online, especially these online games are happening. I mean, online, and that happens to be the only social networking that they do. And my kids, they don't have social media yet because they're young, but and then the conversation happens to grow even when you're um, involving social medias. And this is, we're only talking about chats for while you're gaming. They use chatting platforms. And then how do
Right.
you protect them from online predators that are actively targeting children?
S-
Um,
So what can parents do for that though? I mean,
yeah,
okay, so the password I get, but like if they're in a game, and one of the biggest things is that these games, the interactive nature of them where you can play with other unknown players from around the
exactly,
world is what makes them so much fun, but that can also make them little dangerous as
exactly,
well, right?
exactly,
So how do you prevent a child, short of playing Big Brother and seeing who are they chatting with or
exactly.
what's going?
Exactly. I always say that having conversation, I think the main thing is like having open communication to make them feel like they're safe to come to their parents whenever they're running into issues. I think that's the biggest one. I mean, you can apply content filtering, you can do parental controls, all of those things, which I discussed also in the book, but mostly it's having that open communication. Like you get hacked for whatever reason, how do you come back? And to prevent that, like, do you have that open communication with your parent to um, it's not okay to share your password, or how do you secure your account, or all of the people that you talk to online, they may not be that 12-year-old boy that you think. It might be an adult who's doing that, like to avert those online predator dangers. So coming to a parent and having, and all of these things that I touched on the book actually happened in our life. And if it happened in one home, it's likely that it's happening in another family. So I think it's meant to teach kids, through the story, that it's important to have that conversation with the parent to build that security culture. And when you're talking to people, to be kind, because cyberbullying is another issue that's happening. And the words that you put out on the internet do matter. It's going to affect your life. Knowing all of those things, is very important. But to answer your question, I think having open communication, um, and then you do apply to some extent those parental controls from your end, because you have to block a certain things from their end so that you can protect them. But then I think I'm heavy on having that open communication so that they feel like they can share things with you, knowing what apps they're using, what software they're using, just getting involved in your kids' life, in their gaming life. I know nobody has time. Like my kids always ask me, like they even created an account for me to play with them, but I never logged in. I mean, I know what they're talking about. I always like whenever I'm cooking or something, when they talk about something, and
Yeah.
then I'm always listening, right? I interject something like, "Whoa, how do you
Yeah.
know that, mom?" And I'm like, "Yeah,
Uh,
I know." It's a few things that I pick just to show them that I know what they're talking about, what apps they're doing, and then just controlling their exposure as well. Like how much time are they spending on a day on that device, and then just limiting that time. We lock it, like after a certain point we lock it, and they have to come and get that like as an exception. Otherwise, they're limited on how much time they could spend. And those are some of the things that are mentioned, because
yeah.
especially in the pandemic, people were like not moving, just playing games. So encouraging kids that you should be doing other activities as well that doesn't involve being online, such as reading books or doing activities, because the book is meant for kids age 6 to 14, 13, and that's the age group that I think start talking about these small things that is going to be a huge thing when they grow up, to think about, like
But
to consider. Mhm.
Zinet, one thing that while I was hearing you speak, that y- you've said indirectly is something that we've said on this show many a times, that cybersecurity is not an IT problem, it's a
Mm,
business problem. And when you talk about having that openness of communication, you're kind of highlighting that in a big way, that it is very much a people issue. It's an issue of process, of knowledge, of people. Technology can help with parental controls and things like that in the world of children,
mm,
but ultimately, if you don't have a place where a child can come to a parent, or an employee can go to an employer and tell them of things that have gone wrong, or an employer doesn't share with an employee why certain policies are in place, how it makes them safer. It's not there to restrict them, but to give them more freedom to go do the things that they want to do without the fear of somebody with malicious intent harming them. Those are all business exercises. Those are all process exercises. Those are not technology exercises per se.
exactly. It's a combination of all of those things, right? I mean, even the awareness piece, like if we're not training them, because in the story, after she got hacked, she panics, she feels embarrassed to share that with a parent. But the siblings have this conversation about, our mom tells us about not sharing these things. She's very serious about this. And our parents always encourage us to come to them. It's not only the training part, but also whenever something happens, come to the parents so that they can do something about it the right way, not you deal with it for fear of, that thing that you mentioned, that yeah, a lot of the concepts for sure translate to our business experiences, enterprise wise, or to adults.
Absolutely.
And they even talk about these things happen to adults too. Adults do also
Oh, they happen
things
all the time.
all the time. That must have been the word I used. But yeah, absolutely. And that's the main message of it. And the other is, and we know that cybersecurity isn't that diverse, and I talked about it earlier, is to spark interest for young readers to consider cybersecurity as a career option. Because in the story, the mom who is saving the day after the whole hack happened, in the chaos after the hack, of that gaming platform, a major gaming platform that kids love. And it looks like me, the mom looks like me, and it's encouraging people that to consider that option. And after the mom helped her, the child sort of says she wanted to be in cybersecurity, helping other people, protecting people from this type of theft, that data loss and that type of thing to become a cyber hero type of thing. So it's also to encourage young readers to consider fields such as STEM and cybersecurity through those illustrations and representations that are portrayed within the story. Yeah, I just want to mention that. So this is the page that I'm talking about. That is the mother. Some people say that she looks like me, but that so that when I do the read aloud, so when I get invited to schools and talk about this, and the kids really, they do play such and such games, and everybody raised their hand. Everybody plays the game, so that's how you get their attention to listen and part in some of the messages that you share. And you ask them like, "I play for 8 hours." No, no, that's not a good idea. You should be limiting your time, and then instead of just saying that, play for 2 hours, don't play this. Giving them the
Right.
reason how you should be protecting yourself online. I think that's really important when you're communicating with children.
So let's switch gears here a little bit and go to the business world, the adult world.
Mhm.
You've spent a lot of time in cloud security. Give us some things that companies or businesses generally miss when it comes to cloud security, things that they should be looking out for.
Yeah. So I started my journey, my cloud security work after I joined Best Buy. Prior to that, I was working in information security and IT auditing when I joined, the world of cyber and security space. Um, but from my limited experience that I had in cloud security, right? I think a lot of the conversation happened with not knowing the shared responsibility model, thinking that, security, once you up it in the cloud, it's the responsibility of the cloud service provider. I think having that mindset can be very tricky, and to allowing that misconfigurations that happen, which is the main. I think every year a report comes out. I think it always comes up at the top of the list for cloud security risks like misconfiguration. So I think understanding the shared responsibility model or the split responsibility model, I've heard that word too. What is the cloud service provider responsible for, and then what am I responsible for as a client or as a user of that cloud services? I think makes a huge difference in knowing what you're responsible for and making sure that you're configuring things the right way. Um, and protecting your data.
I'm so glad you said that. I
That
am
comes
so
top of
glad
mind.
we've had several guests on here that have had this chat, and invariably, when we go out into the field and talk to clients or prospective clients or give talks, it's still all pervasive that if I use Microsoft, Microsoft's taking care of my security. If I use Amazon, Amazon's taking care of all my security. Why the heck do I need to do anything? And your choice of words is very apropos. It's a misconfiguration issue. You are responsible for your own data,
Exactly.
for configuring your system and configuring access to it and ensuring the identities that go to it are in fact the correct identities. Amazon's not responsible for any of that.
Exactly.
And
Yeah, I always
right,
say like anything that you're seeing on your console, that's something that you're responsible for. There are things that are
that's a great way
shared.
to look at it.
There are things that are shared. There are things that you're offloading to the cloud service provider. But there are things that you're. I think it begins from that. Knowing that responsibility helps you define what you're supposed to be doing as an organization and prioritizing that, according to your, business goals.
Are there configurations or things that you have seen typically that get skipped over? Like, I'll tell you one. I'll put one out there. One thing that we've seen is that people who use S3 buckets, a lot
Oh,
of
yeah.
times they don't secure the passwords on them to be.
Yeah, that's the main one. Usually that's what's talked about. I think there might be, real world, breaches that happen as a result of that, and coming up in a lot of the reports. But um, the other one is, I think, embedding credentials, and those credentials, being accessible to public repositories and that type of things
Oh
are also
my.
huge things, like getting embedded in those things. I think Um, there are a lot of things like that. Those are preventable, like with the right knowledge. I think having the right skills and knowing, that responsibility and, focused on that instead of just, um, you know, um, I don't know what the word is, but proactively prevent those things, before you try to remediate things afterwards. Those are some of the things that I can think of. Yeah.
Well, well, you've been a blue teamer as well. So
Mm.
tell us a little about some of the learnings from that experience. What was it like being on the blue team as opposed to the red team?
Uh, I mean, we're all defenders, like in a lot of the organizations that, I get, at least, in the spaces that I've been since joining the industry. But uh, the CCDC competition that I mentioned, like back in school, that's when I get to experience first time being in the blue team, representing the university to participate in that simulated act of we have, okay, the red teamers sending us attacks, and how are we defending that simulated organization from attacks, and reporting that accurately. Um, that was my first line of experience, like being a blue teamer in that CCDC competition.
What? So, was there a translating that to real world experiences? Are there things that you see attack sorts that happen regularly that you have to defend against on an ongoing basis that you have seen come up?
Mm, not directly. I mean, I haven't worked in incident response or those type of teams, but I've worked as an IT auditor. I've worked as an information security engineer, like
That's right.
how to defending like
You're a CISA
vulnerability,
auditor.
like the defense side of things, right? And then now, like in cloud security, advising how to best securely use cloud services or how to configure them, working in collaboration with the business or the cloud security engineers, the cloud security operations and architects. But I mean, cybersecurity, it's diverse. You can choose the side of the red teaming or the offensive side of it and the defensive side of it, and you have so many options within those spaces and categories.
So you're a certified CISA auditor, right?
Yeah.
So what when you're going in to audit a company or looking at their profile, are there things that you would advise them to prep for before you even come in to the business to take a look at it?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, my first role within the cybersecurity industry, like when I joined, was that IT auditing, and that's when I explored this certification, the CISA. And I not a so I was the internal auditor, part of internal auditing.
Okay.
So we were auditing mostly the cybersecurity practices of that organization within a local government, and we were checking, we have certain frameworks. That's when I learned about the NIST cybersecurity framework, or the CIS, and based on that, how are we ensuring that it's complying, and that the controls that we have internally are effective, to make sure that the cybersecurity practices are being followed, or the policies are being followed. So more like a compliance and internal auditing type of role. And I worked there for about 2 years before transitioning to the state government to work in the information security engineering spaces. I would say, based on, I think you need to have like a framework that you're using, and then making sure that you know, based on those accepted industry practices, how are we complying that, and how are we ensuring that, and testing those controls, making sure that the compliance is achieved or not, or things are operating effectively from a security policy and control perspective.
Now, do you, since you have government experience and you've done this audit role, what are your thoughts? Do you think most government entities, whether at the state level or federal, or as the case may be, have gained a lot of awareness on cybersecurity, or do they still have a long way to go?
I mean, I don't have experience with federal. I worked in state and local government for a couple of times, But I mean, it depends on the organization's maturity level. I mean, they're all doing the best that they could based on um, the maturity level that the security programs are, and I think that they're doing their best. But I think it's a question for every organization, right? I think it's a matter of how are you taking security um, as a priority. So um, I think based of my experience that I have, I think they do their best and try to achieve what they can, be it protecting their citizens' data, and then or if it's a private one, how are we protecting our reputation and protecting our profit, maximizing profit without ending up on the news for the wrong reasons, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, that's a. I think the media has probably done more to awaken knowledge on cyber than anybody could have possibly done, because this problem's not old. It's been there ever since the dawn of computing. It's just now it's come to the foreground, right?
Yeah, I think it's important to talk about that too, like yeah, the more priority because the leaders and the executives now probably because things are showing up, they might take things seriously to act upon things proactively versus to counteract something after it happened.
Um, well, there's a lot of reactiveness in the industry,
Exactly.
that's for sure.
Hmm.
So, um, I know we're getting towards the end here, but I did have one last question,
Sure.
and then I want to open the floor to you
Sure.
to talk about some of the things that you're doing. Um, if if you were addressing the people back in Ethiopia that may be looking for a way to better their careers, would you have any advice for those folks?
um, I mean, for anybody, immigrants or um, folks everywhere, right? If you have that vision or goal of achieving, or you feel like you have to do something about it, or if you want to, um, if you're not doing something that you love or like something you're passionate about, right? It's never too late to do it or to redo it. I think if I've done it, I think anybody can. I mean, when I do this whole transitioning, I mentioned earlier, like a lot of the people that I was doing an internship when I started was like they were very young people from high school, and I'm redoing it from scratch. And I would say whether you say that I'm already too late or not, time is still gonna fly. Time is still gonna go whether you decide to do or embark on that goal or not. So I would say have the goal and embark on that journey. And once you start it, you never know. You don't know how time flies, and you'll be able to achieve those things with the right focus and the right mindset that you put into it, and you're capable of achieving whatever you set your mind to. If I can do it with while raising four young kids, you can. I mean, I am always a continuous learner. I mean, you mentioned about the grad school that I'm doing, hoping to complete that by the beginning of next year. I have three more classes. Yay to that. It's been a long journey, whether you take it slowly or fast. I mean, it's all about having that goal and knowing why you want to do it. It's always, I think, critical. If you have that why of why, I think it gets simpler even on those hard days. I think it gets easier to achieve those things because you're thinking about your why and why you're doing that. And for me, I think I mentioned that a couple of times. I want to show my kids, especially my girls, uh, that I could be the right role model for them. Like if they want to embark on such things, if they want to rebuild or build their career, if they want to transition, that it's possible because they've seen that kids see and believe what they see versus what you tell them. So I think I've seen that I've shown them that with the career rebuilding and restarting, and then how to be able to thrive within that industry, not only through education, but like if you want to
Yeah.
pursue that certification, because they're involved. Like I tell them what I do, and it's a sacrifice too, right? So they needed to know that it's a sacrifice of time when you're rebuilding something. And then even when writing the books, right? Because I know nothing about self-publishing or writing a book, but just teaching myself and being able to walk with them through that journey of, okay, now we need illustrations. Oh, now how does things fit in? Does it make sense? Does it become a book? And then showing them. And then when the books won an award, like they say that, oh, mommy, now we have a book. Can you believe that? Like 6 months ago, we didn't even have it. Was just an idea. Now we have a book. And sometimes like they talk about it in disbelief. And I love the fact that they're saying we have a book because I get to involve them. The characters within the book are them. The names used are them intentionally because they need to see themselves represented in the literatures that they read. They need to see and hear their names within, and characters that look like them within those things. So if you have a goal, I think you can achieve it. You're not defined by your parents say who you should be. You're not defined by what the society says you should be, or that you have to stick to one career just because you are way into it and you have other ambition and you're not in pursuing that because you think you're old. Those things are, I think, getting old themselves. So I think those are some of the things
See,
I would say.
that's a very nice message.
Right.
Uh, thank you for sharing that. Actually, that's a very, very nice message.
Thank you.
Tell us about. You have 2 minutes left
Yeah.
before we get, and we're grateful for your time. We don't want you to use up more of your time than we should. But last 2 minutes, any new books, talks, anything that you're getting involved with, any place you want to, anything you want to plug.
Yeah, I think in the beginning, before the show started, I mentioned that I achieved another certification just yesterday, and I just found out the reason that that I passed to this morning. I was super excited about that one. I mean, continue learning. That's what I want to say. Continue, especially in cybersecurity. You can never say that I have a degree and I'm done. I just work and go home.
Yeah.
You always have to be continuously learning. I think that's the challenge of it, and that's the exciting part of it too. I think both ways. Um, but I'll say thank you so much for bringing me on this show to talk about this really interesting topics that we really chatted about. I want to say check out my books, my children's books, both
Absolutely.
of them, Proud and
Where can they
Persistent.
find them? If people want to buy them, where can they be bought?
Yeah, so Amazon, it's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and if you're looking to get a signed copy, you can get it from my website, www.zinetkamal.com. I also have a
Wonderful.
website, and yeah, so check out the books. I've recently been featured on GMA, Good Morning America, to share some of the tips for parents on how to stay safe online, based on the story of the book and the lessons from the book. So check that out as well. And just go ahead and be great. Everyone who's listening already, you're doing all the right things. Go ahead and be great.
Well, Zinet, it's been a pleasure to have you. And don't be a stranger here when you write your next book or you do your next major accomplishment in the world of cyber. We'd love to have you back to talk a lot more.
Yeah.
Um,
Thank you so much, Manoj. I appreciate that.
this has been fantastic. Everyone, Zinet Kamal, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.